Y'all, I tried, okay? I thought I could just make a fun video about this silly little movie that Athena and I watched over on her channel. I thought I could go through the plot, throw in some fun facts, everyone would have a good time. But no. There is no explanation for this movie. In fact, this movie has succeeded where so many others have failed, and I have completely lost touch with reality. If you value your sanity, proceed with caution. You have been warned. Happy freaking New Year. Welcome to ShockOrama, your source for all things shock, schlock, and just plain bizarre. I'm Ben Sherman, and today we're looking at a movie that fits all three of those descriptors. Yes, that's right, we're looking at the 1984 film Voyage of the Rock Aliens. Or maybe it's called When the Rain Begins to Fall, because that's inexplicably what appears on the title card at the beginning of this film. Yeah, that's right, this is one of those movies. Directed by James Fargo, who had previously directed The Enforcer, starring Clint Eastwood, Voyage of the Rock Aliens is an insane science fiction musical comedy. It has everything you didn't ask for and don't need, like exploding aliens, Ruth Gordon playing a pervy sheriff, multiple music video segments that are only occasionally connected to the plot, and Michael Berryman as a chainsaw-wielding lunatic with a secret soft side. But let me tell you, the music is the glue that keeps this film together. It is such good cheesy 80s new wavy synth rock. Every song is honestly a banger, they all take turns getting stuck in my head. I've been listening to the soundtrack every morning on my way to work. It's that good. Which makes it even more wild to me that this movie wasn't originally supposed to be a musical. They only added the music after Pia Zadora had signed on to the project. But I don't want to get too ahead of myself. Let me just show you the movie and maybe then it'll make sense. Probably not though. The movie starts with a Star Wars-esque opening shot of a guitar-shaped spaceship flying over the screen. In the version of the movie that I have, the title card reads When the Rain Begins to Fall. And this was actually a bit of a headache for the effects artists who designed this opening sequence. The title of the movie was originally Voyage of the Rock Aliens, and it was apparently a complicated process to film this title sequence, involving arranging the camera so it was pointing straight up and putting all the letters above it so that they could properly simulate all the letters floating out into space after the spaceship crashes into it. This apparently took 5 or 6 attempts to get right, and it was a very labor-intensive process to reset after each take. But then, after they had finished filming this whole sequence, the producers came and told them they had to redo all of it, because Jermaine had just agreed to appear in the film, so they wanted to rename the entire film after the song that he and Pia Zadora sing at the very beginning of the movie. Hence why the version that I have says that the movie is called When the Rain Begins to Fall. However, later, the producers decided to go back to the original title of Voyage of the Rock Aliens anyway, so those poor effects artists. In a shot that reminded me of the opening of Alien, we see a robot slowly moving through the ship, turning all the lights on. But trust me folks, this movie is far more disturbing and twisted than anything you would see in Alien. The set design for the ship is very charming in that retro sci-fi movie kind of way. It looks like something you'd see in an old episode of Star Trek. The robot begins narrating, and I hope you're all taking notes because this is the closest to an explanation you'll get for anything that happens in this movie. Apparently, the crew of this ship is in search of a planet with rock and roll. That's it. They just really love rock and roll. The robot goes to a computer screen that is labeled rama scan, and we see that they've narrowed it down to just a handful of planets. The screen shows scenes from 3 of these planets. The first one is an animatronic nightmare, the second one is a boring dance hall scene, but the third is a Jermaine Jackson music video. This is the first song in the movie, and it wasn't even actually written for the movie. The song When the Rain Begins to Fall was already a big hit in Europe when the movie started production. When Pia Zadora signed on, she and her husband were able to convince the producers to include the music video in the movie for some reason. Hence, why Jermaine Jackson is credited as being in the movie, because he's in the music video. This is the only part of the movie that Jermaine Jackson is in. The song has nothing to do with the rest of the movie, which is a shame to me because I actually really like the song. And the music video is a really fun West Side Story style love story. Also, Pia Zadora is wearing some really cool sunglasses at the beginning. The robot apparently doesn't care for the song, a red flag to be sure. Instead, it decides that they're going to go to Earth, a planet that they have not previewed the music for yet. Obviously, we as the audience know that Earth has a lot of rock music, but they don't know that. For all they know, they could be going to a planet where everyone hates music. What I'm getting at is that I don't trust this robot. It feels like he's trying to sabotage the mission before it's even started. At this point, you're probably wondering, like I was on my first watch, where's the crew? If you're familiar with science fiction movies, you're probably thinking they're in some kind of cryostasis chamber or something like that. They kind of are. Not exactly, though. The robot walks over to a mini fridge and pulls out 6 dolls. That's the crew, those dolls. He undollifies them by putting them all through this tube that spits them out full-sized and awake on the other end. Well, mostly. One of them goes through and it's still a doll at the other end. The first time I watched this movie, I just fully thought that character had died. But no, he just goes through the tube again and it works the second time. Another weird, quirky little thing about these aliens, their names are just random parts of the alphabet. So the commander is named ABCD, there's another one named JKLM, you get the picture. That last one who had trouble getting defrosted is STUVWXYZ. However, later in the film, another character pronounces it Stovitz, so I'm just gonna say Stovitz. Stovitz gets upset when the commander won't let him drive the ship, and then the robot gropes him? Ew! This robot sucks.
He's just a gross robot.
I hate this robot.
But we don't even have time to worry about that, because the crew is going into an absolute banger of a song called 21st Century. It's probably my favorite song in the whole movie. And it's accompanied by an absolutely nonsensical music video, but it's just so fun and goofy, you can't help but smile the whole time. I also love the detail that the ship's controls are just a piano keyboard and a bunch of old video games. The ship arrives at Earth right when the song ends. Down below, we see a group of teenagers partying on a beach by a lake. The lake happens to be highly radioactive, as evidenced by a surfboard that melts as soon as it touches the water, much to the dismay of one surfer bro. Dee Dee, played by Pia Zadora, and her friend Diane walk onto the beach. Dee Dee is upset because her boyfriend Frankie won't let her sing with his band at the high school's cotillion. I had to look up what a cotillion is because I've never heard that word before. Apparently, from what I could gather, it's a fancy ball with dancing and games. I also discovered that it is the former name of what is currently called the Crystal Ballroom in Portland, Oregon, which is where I'm from. Crystal Ballroom is an amazing music and concert venue. I've been there a couple times. It's great. The more you know. What was I talking about? Diane points out that Frankie never said anything about practicing, so Dee Dee goes straight into a song with the band, who are also all at the beach, and also all happen to have their instruments with them. The song itself is really fun, but the choreography makes me really nervous. There's a bunch of shots where it looks like some of the actors nearly get kicked in the face, and I have to wonder how many takes they had to do to get each shot right. We also see a giant tentacle emerge from the lake and attack a couple who are making out on the beach. Gee, I sure would love to learn more about this tentacle creature. It seems like it would be important to the plot. Oh, never mind, it's gone. The fun comes to an end when Frankie shows up and gets all pissy about his band performing without him. Frankie was played by Craig Sheffer, and this was actually his first film role. Later in the 90s, he would appear in films like Nightbreed, Fire in the Sky, and A River Runs Through It. Back on the ship, the aliens are preparing to beam down to Earth. The robot, whose name is 1359 by the way, I didn't mention that earlier, explains that they will be using a telephone booth to beam back and forth from Earth to the ship. Unbeknownst to the aliens, when their telephone booth is launched to Earth, they're spotted by the town's sheriff. The sheriff is played by Ruth Gordon, who is an absolute legend. Her career spans all the way back to 1915 in several uncredited roles, but she's perhaps best known for her roles in Rosemary's Baby and Harold and Maude. Voyage of the Rock Aliens was one of her final film roles, and she passed away just a year after it came out at the age of 88. The sheriff is so shocked that she falls from her balcony. Also, I just thought it was worth mentioning that the reason why the sheriff was out there in the first place was that she was using her telescope to peep on a buff guy doing some half-naked stretches in his room. I mean, this movie was made in the 80s after all. The telephone booth lands and the aliens beam to Earth successfully. I really like the weird sound effects that they make anytime they do their weird alien gestures. 1359 explains to them that they can return to the ship anytime by pressing 8 on the telephone. Before they head out, they decide that they have to disguise 1359 as a fire hydrant to avoid arousing suspicion amongst the locals. Because apparently in this town, a talking, moving fire hydrant is less suspicious than a robot. Frankie is hanging out alone in the local diner that night when Dee Dee walks in. She complains that he's been spending more time with his band than with her, and this is where we first start seeing their terrible, toxic, no good, very bad, stupid relationship.
Not this time.
The aliens, meanwhile, have stumbled across a group of teenagers parked in their cars making out. ABCD, who I will henceforth be referring to as Absid, does some weird alien magic and teleports all the teenagers' clothes onto the aliens. Most of the aliens hate their clothes, but not Stovitz. Stovitz loves it. We love Stovitz. He's a fashion icon. The next morning, the aliens are walking down the road when the sheriff passes by in her police car. She rolls down the window and asks them if they've seen anything weird around, and I still love the sound effects that they play anytime the aliens make their weird robotic gestures. I also wanted to quickly point out that Stovitz is the only alien still wearing his clothes that they stole from the teenagers. Come on, guys, if you're gonna set up human disguises, you gotta commit. The aliens are finally getting close to town, so 1359 decides to scan for intelligent life.
Life form, yes. Intelligent, no.
Well, this looks like an extraordinary village. We shall enter and observe the species.
At the diner, Frankie's band is playing a fun rockabilly song. The song has nothing to do with the plot of the movie, but the music video is pretty fun, and honestly the song's kind of a bop. Dee Dee, Frankie, and some of Frankie's gang walk into the bar, where his drummer starts simping really hard for Frankie. Dee Dee is pissed off at Frankie because he won't refrain from beating people up and generally being a dick. The aliens have finally made it into town, and we see from a sign that the town is called Speelburgh. Like Steven Spielberg, I guess? This makes me think that the film is in some way a parody of Steven Spielberg movies, but I didn't actually see any other references to Spielberg or his movies. Though it is possible that I just didn't notice because it has been a while since I've watched any Spielberg movies, so if you notice anything that I missed, feel free to let me know in a comment. Outside the diner, the aliens stop and decide that it's a good idea for 1359 to stay outside. We get a funny little gag where a police officer stops and gives a car a ticket because it is now parked in front of a fire hydrant. 1359 thanks the officer, and the officer doesn't hear him, which I think is a wasted opportunity. Why not have the police officer, think that the diner's haunted or something, you know? As expected, everyone in the diner is super weirded out by the aliens. And how could they not be? The aliens are acting super weird. I really love the structure that they build out of all the straws at their table. Also, I think that the aliens can drink things through their skin? I'm not sure how else to interpret this scene.
Well, can you drink it like this?
Yeah, that's okay.
Dee Dee and Diane have been in the bathroom talking this whole time and missing the show that the aliens are putting on. Diane asks Dee Dee about the problem she's been having with Frankie, which causes Dee Dee to lead all the girls in the bathroom in a song that includes underwear choreography, gratuitous Frankie posters, and a criminal overuse of a screen mirroring effect. There must have been an editor who had just learned how to do that and got a little too excited. Also, Mustangs rule, okay? On her way back from the bathroom, Dee Dee stops and smiles at Absid, who gets so horny because of this that he explodes. Literally. Like, his head is in someone's meal, his arm is stuck in a lady's hair. He explodes. The crew grabs all the different pieces of Absid and sneak back onto the ship. Now, quickly, how do you think that they put Absid back together? Maybe some kind of alien surgery? Or maybe they screw all of his limbs back together like a Barbie doll? Nope, they flatten him into a poster, cut him out, and then blow him up like a balloon. Go figure.
Reverse Flat Stanley.
This is literally Flat Stanley.
Thank you, because I was like, if they take out a bike pump right now, and I didn't even say it because I'm like, that's too on the nose. It's on the nose.
There's no time to see how Absid or the other aliens react to one of them literally exploding, because they've got a performance on the beach of a radioactive lake to get to. All the teenagers in town are loving it, much to Frankie's displeasure. Diane approaches the band and asks if they'll play at the high school's cotillion, which Absid agrees to when he learns that Dee Dee will be there. This is also the part where I get the pronunciation of the aliens' names from, since Diane just sounds it off from their shirts. Back on the ship, Absid is working on a device that is being called a sexual response stimulator, which is somehow worse than it sounds. In fact, the other aliens are warning him not to use it on humans because the device hasn't been properly tested and could have unexpected effects. Absid doesn't give a shit though and says he's going to use it anyway because he is too horny to worry about silly things like safety or consent. Also, Absid starts singing a song where he imagines being with Dee Dee, and it is the cheesiest thing I've ever seen. At least Dee Dee gets to wear some awesome outfits in the music video though. 1359 makes one final attempt to stop Absid from using the device, and you know when a creep like 1359 is telling you not to use the device, it's bad news. But Absid is determined to see his plan through and enters the diner anyway. As soon as he turns the device on, every man inside the diner is instantly and uncontrollably infatuated with Absid. They dogpile on top of him until their combined weight crushes the device, breaking the spell and leaving all the guys very confused. Dee Dee goes to check on Absid, and they sit down at a booth and talk. Dee Dee explains how Frankie won't let her sing with his band at the cotillion, and when Absid offers to let her sing with his band, she gets really excited. It's really sad how this is the one thing Dee Dee wants, and Frankie just won't let her have it. Like, what is he afraid of? His band being even better? We've seen that she can sing really well. He's just so stuck up his own ass, he needs the spotlight that badly. God, this guy sucks. Then we get a montage of the rest of the aliens doing some research and taking samples of things like wildflowers and cow poop. Guys, what are we doing here? I thought the mission was to find a planet with rock music? What does this have to do with music? Stovitz tries gaining entry to the local state hospital for the criminally insane, but his attempt is foiled by a locked gate outside. As he rests against a wooden fence, a chainsaw starts cutting through it and two inmates escape as he watches. The chainsaw-wielding escapee is played by Michael Berryman, who has been in a long list of movies including One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest and Weird Science, though I know him best from his role as the cannibal Pluto in Wes Craven's 1977 horror film The Hills Have Eyes. Berryman was born with a rare condition called hypohidrotic ectodermal dysplasia, which gives him his striking appearance. In a making-of documentary for Voyage of the Rock Aliens, Berryman explained that he actually has a lot of real-life experience working with chainsaws, which actually saved the props master's life at one point. The exhausted props master was about to start up the live chainsaw that they were using for the film, but Berryman quickly stopped him when he realized that the chain had been installed backwards. He reinstalled it correctly and told the props master that if he had started it, the chain would have fallen off and likely cut his hand off. Michael Berryman also explained during this interview that he refused to be the one using the chainsaw to cut the fence during this scene, since he understood that it could go very badly very quickly since he had no way of knowing where the actor was standing on the other side. He apparently was actually pretty pissed off on Stovitz's actor's behalf because the director and producers wouldn't let him use a green screen or at least a body double for this shot. Honestly, after hearing this story, I'm pretty pissed off too. An actor's safety should never be sacrificed for the sake of a movie. Especially Voyage of the Rock Aliens. Back at the diner, Frankie and his gang have just arrived, and Frankie is pissed to see that Absid is sitting with Dee Dee. He tells his gang to take Absid outside and beat him up. Frankie's goons try beating up Absid, but he summons a flimsy piece of plastic that somehow repels all of their attacks.
Maybe he's into Scientology or something.
Oh, do you remember how Michael Berryman escaped from an asylum earlier? Well, him and his buddy are now at a store buying all sorts of fun goodies like rifles, grenades, mines, bazookas, you know, the essentials. Would you believe me if I told you that we never see any of these things ever again? That this entire scene has nothing to do with the rest of the movie? Well, yeah, that. Absid is completely unfazed by the fact that Frankie and his gang are trying to kill him, and he decides to walk Dee Dee to school the next day. In fact, Dee Dee might be his only weakness, since even though he's able to stop himself from exploding again, he still passes out from horniness after she leaves. Frankie interrogates Dee Dee and Diane about where the aliens are, and I only included this scene in my script because it has one of my favorite lines in the movie.
I think I know somebody who's jealous.
Why would I be jealous of someone who's about to become recently deceased?
Frankie tells his gang to guard all the doors to the school during the cotillion to make sure the aliens can't get inside. Also, the deputy is patrolling the halls of the high school during the cotillion. This will be important later, so don't forget. Oh, here's a fun scene to distract you from all that plot going on. So, Michael Berryman as the crazed chainsaw-wielding maniac. You remember him, right? So, apparently he's actually killed some people. Or a people. He's killed one person. And it is the sheriff's job to inform that poor guy's family that he's dead. I'm just going to show it to you. It's my favorite Ruth Gordon moment in the entire movie.
Am I speaking to the widow of John S. Lamont?
You must be mistaken. I'm not a widow.
The hell you're not.
When they realize that Frankie's goons are guarding all the doors to the high school, the aliens send 1359 out to try and find an alternative means of entry. And now back to the deputy, who, as you might remember, is patrolling the halls of the high school. He has a run-in with the chainsaw guy, and their fight gets more and more ridiculous as they keep grabbing different random objects to fight each other with, until the deputy is finally overpowered by an electric toothbrush. By now, 1359 has found an entrance to the school for the aliens, which turns out to be the toilets in the boys' bathroom.
Where's Stovitz?
Sorry, guys. I guess I made a wrong turn.
Oh, Stovitz, you rascal you. In the gym, Frankie's goons are telling him how they've locked down the school. There is absolutely, without a doubt, a 0% chance of those weird alien guys getting in. And, of course, those weird alien guys walk in right behind them as they're saying this. I'd also like to point out the excellent form and technique that Frankie uses when he slaps all four of them at the same time, transitioning smoothly into pointing their heads towards the aliens. Absolutely incredible technique. Frankie could probably make a fortune teaching slapping lessons. While the aliens are busy doing alien things like teleporting themselves onto the stage instead of using the stairs like normal people, Dee Dee walks up to Frankie to announce that A, she's singing with the aliens band, and B, she's breaking up with Frankie. Then the aliens and Frankie's goons get into a good old-fashioned battle of the bands, and it's honestly so fun hearing the cheesy new wave synth rock version of the song as played by the aliens band, and then the same song played in a punky rockabilly style by Frankie's band. The aliens win the battle of the band, because it's the 80s, and Absid and Dee Dee decide to go on a romantic walk to the radioactive lake. Now, with all this crazy hullabaloo, I hope you haven't forgotten about the chainsaw-wielding maniac that is currently roaming the halls of the high school. Diane is walking around trying to find Frankie. Oh, right, I haven't explained this. So Diane actually has a huge crush on Frankie, so now that Frankie and Dee Dee have broken up, she's trying to get with Frankie, which I think is kind of a shitty thing to do considering Dee Dee's Diane's best friend, but I digress. Diane is walking around trying to find Frankie when the chainsaw guy attacks her. He chases her into a music room, but then his chainsaw starts malfunctioning. Because Diane's personality starts and ends at quirky mechanic girl, she ends up helping him fix the chainsaw. Absid and Dee Dee are taking a romantic walk by the radioactive lake, and Dee Dee starts explaining how it became radioactive because of a factory that was dumping toxic waste into it. Naturally, this puts Absid in the mood, and he leans in for a smoochy smooch, which Dee Dee is way too polite in turning down. Dee Dee asks Absid if she can join his band, which Absid accepts. However, he does have to tell her that his band and him are actually aliens.
I'm an alien.
That's okay. There's lots of English bands. What about Menudo?
Absid takes Dee Dee up to the spaceship in the phone booth, but two of Frankie's gang members actually see them using the phone booth to teleport, so they rush back to let Frankie know. However, Frankie's a bit too in his feelings still from breaking up with Dee Dee. In fact, he's decided to dissolve the band and the gang. Uh-oh. Is this character in a musical movie getting really emotional? You know what that means. Song time! Frankie opens his locker to reveal a massive shrine to Dee Dee inside. The way he starts singing to and staring at Pia Zadora's headshot, you'd think that she had tragically died, but no, Pia Zadora is still alive and well. Actually, she likes gifting copies of this movie to her family members. I think Frankie's just overreacting. Frankie starts singing about the nature of the beast, whatever that is. The music video also features two women who look like they were kidnapped from a local production of Cats, along with a live cougar. Also, at one point, Frankie just loses his shirt for no reason. The end of the music video has Frankie leading the cougar back into his locker where he locks it in. I don't think locking a live cougar into a confined space like that is a good idea. Should I call animal control? What the hell, Frankie? Frankie's former gang is walking around being all pissed off that he abandoned them. But then suddenly the two guys that saw Absid and Dee Dee teleport in the phone booth suddenly remembered that they saw this unexplainable event, so they decide to bring it up to the other guys. Up on the spaceship, Absid and Dee Dee are lying on the floor being all cute and romantic and shit. Absid asks Dee Dee if she'll come with him to his homeworld, which Dee Dee initially is pretty interested in, but then Absid explains that she'll have to get an emelectomy. He explains this is a minor operation that removes all emotions, and that everyone on the planet has one. This was actually mentioned earlier in the film when Absid exploded after seeing Dee Dee for the first time, when one of his bandmates said that his emelectomy had failed. Because of this, I believe that whatever species of alien the rock aliens are, emotions must be fatal to them, which is why they have to get them surgically removed. Kind of terrifying the more you think about it. Dee Dee agrees that this is all pretty freaky stuff, and she realizes she actually is gonna miss all of her friends in Speelburgh, so she pieces out. In case you were wondering, Diane and the chainsaw guy are still working on his chainsaw together. While Frankie is wandering around the school, the other escaped convict, yeah, remember him, attacks him. Dee Dee arrives just in time to see Frankie defeat the escaped convict, and then the tentacle monster from the radioactive lake, yeah, remember him, attacks both of them and wraps itself around the school. Diane and the chainsaw guy have just finished fixing the chainsaw, and guess what? He has a tentacle to test it on. They find Frankie and Dee Dee, and chainsaw guy defeats the tentacle. I really like the fact that the tentacle starts blowing bubbles where it was cut open. Diane and the chainsaw guy are in love now for some reason, so they decide to go on a romantic walk together. Also, Frankie and Dee Dee are in love again for some reason, so they decide to give each other a little smooch. While all this nonsense has been going down at the school, Frankie's former gang have found the teleporter. It takes them a little while, but eventually they figure out how to use it to get on the spaceship. There's also a scene where we see that the sheriff has somehow got a hold of a road roller, which she insists is going to help her fight the alien menace, but all that really happens is she accidentally flattens and kills two construction workers. There's actually been a couple of other scenes like this with the sheriff obsessing over how to fight the aliens, but I've been leaving them out because they don't go anywhere and they don't really have anything to do with the rest of the movie. Absid goes back to the ship and we finally get to see what kind of horrible things the gang has done to sabotage the aliens. Oh, they just spray painted on the walls? Jeez, I've seen worse damage done at house parties. Absid is really depressed, so he calls the aliens back to the ship. But first we get to see the requisite scene of a dog trying to pee on 1359. Frankie and Dee Dee are walking through a forest, and Frankie promises Dee Dee that from now on he's only going to sing duets with her. Aww. You're still an asshole, Frankie. The gang overhears them and decides to go and beat up Frankie, but fear not! For now is when Absid decides to reveal the most insane and overpowered rock alien technology we have seen thus far. Using the ship's controls, he literally alters reality, turning the gang into a Boy Scout troop, cleaning the radioactive lake, and putting the sheriff and her deputy into swimsuits on the beach. Frankie and Dee Dee start singing When the Rain Begins to Fall, and Absid decides to let Stovitz drive the ship this time. And that's how the movie ends. I know that I was planning on releasing this video back in October, and it is now not October. My busy work schedule got in the way, but also this movie is just insane. Like, you just watched the video, you know what I'm talking about. How does one watch a fever dream like this and then figure out a way to explain it to people? Voyage of the Rock Aliens exists firmly within the so bad it's good category of movies. Quite the feat for a comedy film to accomplish. Typically, so bad it's good movies are horror movies or drama movies, or serious stories that were way too ambitious for the skill level of their creators. But Voyage is a very weird movie, and it's by leaning way too far into its own weirdness that it manages to remain an entertaining movie, not merely cringe-inducing. My main complaint with this movie is that it criminally underutilized both Michael Berryman and Ruth Gordon. There were points where their plot lines would feel like they were on the verge of doing something, but ultimately they were left as comic relief. This just doesn't work in a movie where the main plotline is already completely full of this zany style of comedy. So these side plots just felt like pointless distractions after a while. The music really sticks out to me as the main event of the film. Always weird, always cheesy, and it fully embraces both of these qualities. Also, some of the Alien songs give me Devo vibes, which is awesome because I love me some Devo. And that's it. As always, if you made it this far, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. My goal for 2024 is to start releasing videos more regularly, at least once a month, and I do have a big series that I'm beginning to plan and do research for that I am very excited about. Until next time, stay weird.